You clearly marked the price of a single steamed bun at 10,000 yuan, and everyone thought you had gone completely crazy for money. What they didn't know was that you were actually selling at a loss, all just to complete the task your master had assigned you. Now, after setting up your stall for an entire week, you still hadn't sold a single bun. Just as you were sighing that today had been another wasted day, a burst of noisy commotion suddenly reached your ears. When you looked up, you saw a fat man standing in front of the stall. He glanced up at the sign and asked, "Hey little boss, what's in these buns? Dragon meat? Or do they grant immortality after you eat them? What gives you the guts to charge 10,000 for one bun?" I looked at him calmly and replied, "You'll know why after you eat it." "Oh, you've got some attitude. People who act this confidently usually have some real skill." He grinned. "Boss, give me one." Hearing that, I looked straight at him. "Are you sure?" "Of course I'm sure." "What, are you worried I won't pay?" I only glanced at him once. "If you knew what you were dealing with, you wouldn't even think about refusing to pay." "Wow, that's a big claim. Relax. Whether it tastes good or not, you've clearly posted the price, so I'll pay according to the menu. If it turns out to be a ripoff, I'll admit I was unlucky." I said nothing more. I simply nodded and pushed a bamboo steamer toward him. "Supreme crab roe soup bun. Please enjoy." My cousin immediately moved her phone camera as close as possible. "Come on, everyone. It's time to witness a miracle." She lifted the lid. Inside was only a single bun. It was translucent and amber colored. Through the thin wrapper, you could clearly see the golden broth gently swaying inside. At the very center of that golden soup, a cluster of crimson crab meat appeared and disappeared faintly like a beating heart. The top of the bun had exactly 36 folds, forming the perfect shape of a slightly open fish mouth, yet not a single trace of steam escaped from it. My cousin and the viewers in the live stream were completely stunned. "This isn't food, this is a work of art. Is that skin even real? It looks transparent like a balloon." The presentation is impressive, but maybe it's made with some kind of chemical gel. There's plenty of fake high-tech food these days. As she spoke, she reached out to pick it up and taste it. I quickly stopped her. Then I took out an extremely thin bamboo straw and a small white porcelain dish. Carefully, I transferred the bun onto the dish in front of her. "First open a window, then drink the soup. Swallow the whole bun in one bite for the full fragrance. Remember, you have 3 minutes. After 3 minutes, the temperature of the broth will drop below 65 degrees Celsius, and the freshness will lose 30%. At that point, it becomes garbage." My cousin rolled her eyes at me. "You're being ridiculously dramatic." She gently inserted the thin straw into the fish mouth opening at the top of the bun. The moment the straw pierced the tiny opening in the wrapper, an indescribably overwhelming aroma exploded out from that needle-sized hole. In that instant, my cousin felt as if the top of her head had been smashed open. The fragrance rushed through her nostrils straight into her brain, instantly shattering her rational defenses. Her saliva began pouring uncontrollably. The crowd that had been pointing and whispering moments ago suddenly froze as if they had been struck by a paralysis spell. Then the crowd erupted into restless commotion. Countless eyes locked onto the bun in my cousin's hands. At that moment, she no longer cared about the live stream. She wrapped her lips around the straw and took a hard sip. The golden broth surged through the straw into her mouth. Scalding, fresh, ultimate. In that instant, she seemed to see a gigantic king crab waving its massive claws in a storm-tossed ocean. She saw freshly unearthed matsutake mushrooms covered with dew on an endless snow-covered plateau. She saw a 30-year-old wine cellar in the misty rain of Jiangnan slowly being opened. Every pore in her body seemed to explode open at once. An unprecedented wave of pleasure swept through her entire body, making her want to kneel down on the spot. The viewers in the live stream became even more confused when they saw her expression. "Jiege, what happened to you? Is it really that disgusting? Did the host get poisoned and lose her voice?" My cousin ignored all the comments. She threw away the straw, picked up the remaining bun still packed with crab meat, and swallowed it in a single bite. The wrapper, as thin as a cicada's wing, melted instantly on her tongue. Then came the rich, oily texture of the crab roe, the crispness of the matsutake, and the mellow aroma of aged huadiao wine. The different textures exploded inside her mouth, performing a magnificent symphony of flavors. With her eyes closed, 2 streams of tears slowly flowed down from the corners of her eyes. A faint smile appeared on my lips. "Finished eating? Put the plate down. Don't drip your saliva onto my stall." My cousin suddenly opened her eyes wide. I shook my head. She panicked. The ultimate freshness seemed to have completely robbed her of her sanity. I didn't waver in the slightest. I simply packed up the stall and went home. home. Meanwhile, her food review livestream exploded across the entire internet overnight. However, her almost addicted obsessive reaction caught the attention of the Market Supervision Bureau. I clenched my fist and looked at the strength in my hand. A trace of golden light flashed through my eyes. If that's the case, then perhaps that dish can finally be attempted. The next day, I exchanged for 3 sets of supreme bun ingredients from the system. When evening arrived and I reached the night market, my stall was already surrounded by nearly 1,000 people. Some had come to livestream and chase internet traffic. Some were simply curious whether the buns were real. But what I didn't expect was that the moment I arrived, the crowd suddenly erupted into chaos. A wave of hostility erupted the moment you stepped into view. Get out of the night market, crook. 10,000 for a steamed bun. Why don't you just rob us? Shut it, all of you. Your cousin came charging through the crowd like an enraged lioness, planning herself in front of you. The entire square went silent. The livestream chat flooded with nothing but question marks. You ignored every bit of it. You simply pulled out a sign and set it on the counter. Supreme crab roast soup dumpling, $10,000 each. 3 available tonight only. 1 per customer. Must be consumed on the premises. The crowd stared at you like you'd grown a second head. Money walking straight through the door, and you're turning it away. Nobody plays hard to get this smoothly. Then a voice cut through the crowd, dripping with arrogance, smoke, and mirrors. The speaker stepped forward. Zhao Kuo, one of Jing Cheng's most notorious wealthy young heirs. He gave a sharp whistle. A massive Norwegian elk hound leapt out of the car behind him. The crowd burst into jeering laughter. Zhao Kuo blinked once. Then his expression turned to pure fury. You weren't worthy of eating my food to begin with. But since you want to feed it to a dog, fine. Let your own tongue tell you what you already are. His left hand began trembling. Against every instruction his brain was sending, it drifted toward the steamer basket. His mind was screaming at him. Eat it, you have to eat it. But his pride kept fighting back. His face turned the deep purple red of a bruised liver as the war played out across his features. But the fragrance was alive. It dismantled his willpower piece by piece, as methodically and completely as a key turning in a lock. He dropped to both knees on the pavement. The entire square went dead silent. You slid the dumpling in front of him, your voice quiet and unhurried. Go ahead, eat, remember, 3 minutes. Right now, the experience is a perfect 100. Every minute after that, it drops 10 points. Zhao Kuo couldn't hold it a second longer. He opened his mouth and bit down. The scalding golden broth detonated across his palate. His eyes went wide. In that single instant, something happened to him that he had no words for. It felt less like eating and more like his soul had been briefly lifted out of his body and shown something vast and ancient. This wasn't a bun. This was mountains and oceans and decades of passing time, all compressed and folded into a single layer of paper-thin dough. He made a sound, muffled and unintelligible, his mouth completely full, completely unaware that tears were already running freely down his face. He extended his tongue and, with all dignity abandoned, licked the last remaining drop of oil from the edge of the tray. The livestream chat went into complete meltdown. This is scripted. It has to be. How much did they pay Zhao Kuo to kneel like that? I don't believe a single second of this. Look at his face. You can't fake a micro expression like that. He's genuinely lost his mind. And then, as if coming out of a trance, Zhao Kuo grabbed hold of your leg with both arms and refused to let go. I'll give you $1 million. Sell me the other 2, please. At that exact moment, a group of people in official uniforms pushed through the edge of the crowd. The man at the front, middle-aged, expression like carved stone, produced his identification badge without hesitation. Market Regulatory Bureau, Inspector Zhang. Who is the proprietor of this stall? We have reason to believe your product may contain hallucinogenic substances. Please cooperate with our sampling investigation. The crowd absolutely lost it. Called it, they added poppy husks. Some new synthetic compound? Has to be. This kid's finished. Zhao Kuo, who had only just returned to something resembling awareness, immediately stepped in front of you. Nobody's confiscating anything. I got on my knees because I wanted to. There's nothing wrong with these buns. Whether there's anything wrong will be determined by the test. Step aside. You reached out and gently moved him behind you. Be my guest. You stepped to the side and gestured toward the steamer basket. An inspector snapped on sterile gloves, opened a sampling kit, and removed a professional food analysis device. He lifted one of the crab roe soup dumplings with careful hands, placed it on a sterile tray, and brought a high-powered torch close to the surface. Under the light, the skin was crystalline. So thin the broth moving inside was fully visible. Every grain of crab roe distinct and countable. He produced a surgical scalpel and prepared to cut. You spoke up. Wait, Inspector Zhang's eyes sharpened. Having second thoughts? You shook your head and pointed at the blade. Your knife is too dull. It'll compress the skin's fiber structure and push the broth sideways. That will compromise your sampling accuracy. You reached into your coat and produced a blade so thin it caught the light like a dragonfly's wing. I'll cut. You collect. Inspector Zhang considered this for a moment, then gave a single nod. You stepped forward. One clean motion, and the dumpling divided perfectly down its center, but didn't collapse, didn't buckle. A slow ribbon of golden broth began flowing from the cut, spreading in a perfect sheen across the white tray. And with it came a wave of fragrance 10 times more concentrated than anything the crowd had experienced before. The enforcement officers standing closest went momentarily glassy-eyed. Even Inspector Zhang's expression shifted. That aroma was too clean, too pure. Nothing like the sharp chemical edge of artificial flavoring. The inspector worked quickly, pressing test strips against the broth and collecting samples with a probe, loading everything into the rapid analysis unit. 3 minutes later, he looked down at the results. His voice came out slightly unsteady. Results are in. Inspector Zhang's tone was flat and serious. Any poppy alkaloids? Any flavor enhancers? The inspector cleared his throat. All prohibited substance tests negative. No papaverine. No industrial coloring. No chemical flavor enhancers. No preservatives. The crowd erupted. Nothing added? Then how is it that fragrant? The inspector continued reading, his voice shifting into something closer to disbelief. Because these ingredient readings are extraordinary. The protein composition is exceptionally pure. Cross-referenced, this is June yellow crab paste at 99% purity. The volatile aromatic compounds match 30-year aged Huadiao rice wine, and there are trace quantities of premium matsutake mushroom throughout. He looked up from the device and stared directly at you. Boss, is this entire broth made from nothing but crab roe, matsutake, and 30-year-old wine? Because if you added even a single drop of water, these numbers would be impossible. The crowd fell into stunned silence. Pure crab roe, no filler. Do you know how many crabs that takes? 30-year Huadiao. That stuff costs thousands per pound. And matsutake on top of that? Inspector Zhang took the report and read it through 3 full times. His expression shifting slowly from official suspicion to something he hadn't expected to feel standing at a night market stall. This young man in front of him was quite possibly selling at a loss. You added quietly without any particular emphasis. The flour is snow blossom grade from Walnut Plains. Only the innermost 5% of the wheat core is used. The dough was worked for 3 hours, rested twice. Final skin thickness is exactly 0.5 millimeter. Tolerance of no more than 1/100th of a millimeter. Inspector Zhang went quiet. In an era that had given itself over entirely to pre-made shortcuts and chemical enhancement, someone had chosen to do things the hardest possible way, the stubborn old-fashioned way, refusing every shortcut, just to do justice to a traditional delicacy. Inspector Zhang straightened up and addressed the crowd around him. Following on-site testing, all indicators at this stall meet national food safety standards. Furthermore, every ingredient in these products is exactly what it claims to be. The square exploded. It's real. I knew it all along. Boss, I want one too. I'll kneel to eat it if I have to. You let the cheering wash over you, then raised one hand to quiet it. Tonight's buns are sold out. Tomorrow, the buns come off the menu. New item launches instead. A dish where you eat chicken without seeing chicken. Price is $888. Without waiting for the eruption of debate that followed, you pushed your cart into the evening dark and disappeared. With the official endorsement now on record, your little street stall became a national phenomenon overnight. Food lovers from across the country began making their way to the night market, and the mysterious new dish consumed every conversation. By morning, you had already exchanged the premium ingredients for chicken bean curd from the system and prepared the dish. By evening, the Red Dust Night Market had the tourism authority itself managing the crowd, numbers several times larger than the night before, but moving in orderly lines. You pushed your cart into position and set out the new sign. Chicken bean curd, $888 per bowl. 10 bowls available tonight only. Note, this is not tofu. The crowd read the note and immediately filled with confusion. Not tofu? Then what is it? It looks exactly like tofu. Clear broth? White curd? $888 for a bowl of that? Boss has truly lost the plot. Your most loyal supporter, Tang Ji, bellowed above the noise. Master Zuo's work is always masterwork. Do any of you understand what it means when simplicity is the highest art? At that moment, an elderly man in a traditional traditional Zhongshan suit pressed through the crowd. One bowl. That one's mine. The man was none other than the president of Jingcheng's Culinary Arts Association. Tang Jie immediately cleared a path. Elder Liu, you came yourself? The old man stepped to the counter and fixed his gaze on the pot of clear broth for a long, quiet moment. When he finally spoke, his voice had gone very careful. Young man, did you clarify this broth using the triple sweep method? You nodded. Triple sweep, triple clear. Elder Liu pulled in a sharp breath. That's an imperial palace technique. It was lost 50 years ago. Even the chefs who cook state banquets today can only manage 2 passes. How old are you? You didn't answer. You simply picked up the ladle, filled a bowl, and placed it in front of him with both hands. Elder Liu accepted it with both hands in return. He bent his head and breathed in first. No seasoning, no spice, nothing but the purest, most concentrated essence of meat, as clean and direct as a clear mountain spring. He lifted a spoonful of the white curd to his lips. The next second, his eyes flew open. It dissolved the instant it touched his tongue. No resistance, no texture to speak of, transforming immediately into a wave of impossibly rich, savory broth that slid down his throat like silk. The sensation was so soft, so impossibly refined, that it bordered on liquid. It looked like tofu. It tasted like the finest chicken he had ever encountered in 70 years of eating, without a single visible trace of meat anywhere. Eat chicken without seeing chicken. Elder Liu set down his bowl. The corners of his eyes were wet. He looked at you for a long moment, then bent forward in a deep, formal bow. I am 70 years old. I believed I would go to my grave without tasting this dish again. I never imagined I would find it at a night market stall. Young man, this bowl is worth 888. It would be worth 8,888. This is a true national treasure. The words landed like a stone dropped into still water. Within 10 seconds, all 10 bowls were gone. Every single person who tasted it wore the same expression of helpless, surrendered wonder. This isn't tofu. This is all meat. How is this all meat? You let out a quiet breath and watched it unfold. With chicken bean curd as your foundation, you were no longer simply a viral street vendor. You were a custodian of something that had nearly disappeared from the world. But inside a black Mercedes parked at the edge of the market, a middle-aged man in a tailored suit spoke in a cold, flat voice to the assistant beside him. Have you found anything? Nothing, sir. His ingredients seem to appear from nowhere. There's no supplier record anywhere in the system. Lee Sen's mouth curved into a thin smile. I don't care who he is. That recipe is going to be mine. You had just begun packing up your cart when the system chimed again. New challenge unlocked. Capital siege. Mission objective. With supply lines cut, defeat a master chef using the most ordinary ingredients available. You looked at the mission panel and let a slow, amused smile cross your face. Now that's interesting. Beside you, Tang Jie was wiping down your bowls and chopsticks with the dedication of a devoted employee, talking the whole time without pause. Zuoge, you should have seen their faces just now, like they'd been hit by something. Can we do more tomorrow? Double the amount? You shook your head. Abundance breeds mediocrity. Whatever the number, my rules don't change. Tomorrow? A deep voice cut in before you could finish. Tomorrow, I'm afraid you won't be open at all. The man who stepped forward was well-dressed, composed, and spoke with the ease of someone who had never needed to raise his voice to be heard. Allow me to introduce myself. Lee Sender's chairman of Weijue Xuan Group. You let your eyes settle on him for a moment, something you need. Lee Sen gestured toward your cart. Impressive craft. I'd like to discuss a business proposition. Not interested. You turned back to your cart. 5 million. Lee Sen said it plainly. The crowd around you went immediately silent. When you didn't break stride, he continued, plus a position as technical advisor to Weijue Xuan Group, annual salary of 1 million, all other compensation negotiable. All you need to do is hand over the complete recipes for the crab roe bun and the chicken bean curd, and record instructional videos. That's everything. The live stream chat detonated. 5 million. Just like that, Weijue Xuan is a publicly listed giant. This is a life-changing offer. Lee Sen's eyes carried the particular gleam of a man who had never failed to close a deal. Your craft combined with my capital and distribution networks. We'll put Zuo's soup bun into every city in the country. You'll be worth billions. You stopped walking, you turned around, and you smiled, but there was nothing warm in it. And what price are you planning to sell them at? Lee Sen waved the question off. That's not your concern. We'll standardize production through a central kitchen system, reduce overhead by substituting standard crab powder for premium crab paste, and replace fresh killed chicken with frozen breast meat. As long as we preserve your signature seasoning profile and supplement it with a few food additives to simulate texture, I'm confident we can bring the unit cost down to under $5. The margins would be extraordinary. Your expression went cold. So you want to use garbage ingredients and chemical compounds, sell them under my name, and call it my food. You took one step forward and closer to Lee Sen, closing the distance between you. This isn't deception, it's commerce. Lee Sen's brow furrowed with mild irritation. You shook your head. Then we have nothing to discuss. In my eyes, food is sacred. It carries the soul of the person who made it and the trust of every person who eats it. Someone like you has no right to speak the word flavor. 5 million, 500 million. Neither number changes my answer. You turned and pushed your cart out of the night market. Lee Sen's voice followed you into the dark, low and unhurried. Zuo, is it? You'd better enjoy tonight. Starting tomorrow, let's see who's willing to sell you so much as a single vegetable. The system chimed immediately. Warning. Host has been detected under full capital blockade. Main quest updated. Desperate counterattack. Objective, using only the most common everyday ingredients. With no access to premium supplies, defeat Wei Xuan's elite culinary team in a direct confrontation. New skill unlocked. Alchemist's Fire. Ability to awaken the latent potential within ordinary ingredients, transforming the mundane into the extraordinary. You let out a quiet, cold laugh. A blacklist? Fine. Let me show you what a real culinary god actually looks like. The next morning, you made your way to Jingcheng's largest wholesale food market. Every vendor you approached refused to meet your eyes. Not one of them would sell you a single ingredient. You were just about to leave the seafood section when you spotted something in the far corner of the market. An elderly woman crouched behind a weathered tarpaulin spread on the ground. On it sat a bundle of slightly wilted bok choy and a bag of aged rice that had begun to clump from the humidity. In the eyes of anyone else, it was garbage. In your eyes, it was exactly what you needed. The old woman looked up when you stopped, a faint light flickering in her clouded eyes. Buying vegetables today, young man? I'll take all of it. She blinked at you, confused. The rice is a bit hard. Only really good for fried rice. Perfect. Fried rice is exactly what I'm making. By evening, something new had appeared directly across from your stall at the Red Dust Night Market. A lavish, temporary stage. More than a dozen chefs in spotless white uniforms stood in a row, working through air-flown Australian lobster, Japanese wagyu, and French black truffle with practiced ease. Lee Sen stood at the front of the stage, microphone in hand, watching you with open amusement. In appreciation of the people of Jingcheng, Wei Xuan is proud to host a complimentary gourmet showcase this evening. All premium dishes complete with eats, completely free, unlimited servings. The crowd erupted. Free lobster and abalone. The line in front of your stall shed more than half its people in under a minute. Tang Ji stared at the suddenly empty queue, sweat breaking across his forehead. Zuoge, this is sabotage. What are we selling tonight? You ignored the provocative look Lee Sen was sending across the square. You reached under your cart and pulled out the bag of aged rice and the crate of wilted bok choy. On the stage, Lee Sen saw it and nearly choked with laughter. Everyone, look at this. Our so-called food god has brought us something very special tonight. Rotten cabbage leaves, moldy rice. Are you making pig slop? The onlookers shifted uncomfortably. He's actually using that stuff? Standing next to a lobster spread, this looks like a beggar's last meal. You heard none of it. You set the wok over the flame, cranked the burner to its maximum, and got to work. You poured the aged rice into water and worked it fast with your hands, separating each grain individually until they were dry and distinct. Then came the eggs. 10 free-range yolks only, beaten directly into the rice, worked in until every single grain was coated on all sides in a complete layer of deep gold. Not just coated, absorbed. This was the legendary gold wrapping silver technique, but in your hands it went far beyond the surface. You lifted the iron wok one-handed, 20 pounds of solid metal, oiled it clean, and tipped the egg-coated rice in. The flame erupted 2 meters into the air. Your arm became a blur. Every grain flew. Every grain danced through the fire, each one kissed by the flame at exactly the right moment. The egg sealed in an instant. The stale inner quality of the aged rice forced out and converted into something else entirely. A deep, caramelized fragrance like the crunch at the bottom of a clay pot. Something between toasted grain and pure smoke. And then the rice began to glow. Across the square, someone stopped mid-bite on a lobster claw. What is that? Then the smell hit. If the crab roe bun had been about opulence and the chicken bean curd had been about purity, this was something else completely. This was the smell of life itself. Kitchens and families and the particular warmth of something made with full attention. It rolled across the square like a tide, and it was stronger than every dish on Lee Sen's stage combined. You didn't stop. Final step? You grabbed the wilted bok choy, chopped it fine, and dropped it into the wok. wok. 3 seconds only. The residual heat of the rice did the work, killing the raw bite while preserving the full snap and sweetness of the green. You called it. The wok tilted. A cascade of gold poured from above, landing in 10 white porcelain bowls arranged in a perfect row below, each bowl mounted into a small pyramid. Every grain was distinct, gleaming under the lights with a warm, beckoning sheen. The fragments of bright green bok choy set within it like chips of jade. Steam rose and billowed upward into the night air, forming a cloud of fragrance that settled over the entire square, and completely overwhelmed the collective output of every premium dish across the way. You set down the wok. You picked up a wooden placard and hung it on the front of your stall. Soul-shattering golden fried rice. $188 per bowl. 10 bowls available tonight only. 1 full second of complete silence fell over the market. Then the free lobster stopped being interesting. I want that rice. That rice is glowing. It's actually glowing. Move, I'm buying. $188 is too cheap. Give me a bowl. A young office worker who had arrived early enough to claim a free Australian lobster was now sitting on the curb outside the market, staring blankly at the half-eaten crustacean in his hands. He had managed to get the last bowl of fried rice. The moment that single grain, perfectly sealed in egg, crackling with caramelized fragrance, had danced across his tongue, the lobster in his hand had transformed into a lump of expensive, soulless rubber. On his stage, Lee Sen stared across the square with his jaw clenched so tight, the muscles in his face had locked. That was a bag of damp, clumped, borderline spoiled rice. How? His assistant approached with a tablet, visibly trembling. Sir, we've lost control of the online narrative completely. Lee Sen snatched the device. The trending list had been taken over entirely. Zuo Zuo's Battle of Divinity, aged rice and wilted cabbage destroys Australian lobster. Capital tried to starve a food god and got a masterclass instead. The comments were a tsunami of mockery and celebration rolling in together, and they were accelerating by the second. Lee Sen hurled the tablet to the ground. Keep the blacklist running. I want it tightened. Let's see how many days he can cook on a bag of stale rice. It won't work. The voice came from the shadows behind the stage, aged, unhurried, carrying the quiet weight of absolute authority. Lee Sen scrambled to his feet. Master. The man who stepped into the light was Zhou Tong, the supreme elder of Southern culinary arts, revered across the entire industry as the god of Southern cooking. Master, what are you doing here? If I hadn't come, you would have finished bearing Wei Jue Xuan's reputation yourself. Using capital to crush a man, cutting off his ingredients, and still losing this badly. Lee Sen, did you swallow the culinary ethics I taught you along with your dinner? Lee Sen broke into a cold sweat. Master, it was him, that Zuo Zuo. He used some kind of technique. That fried rice had to have something illegal in it. There's no other explanation. I tasted 1 spoonful of that rice myself. Zhou Tong closed his eyes as if still tracing the memory of the flavor across his palate, channeling fire to transform the spirit of the grain, drawing sweetness from damaged greens. That is the highest application of heat mastery. A technique long thought lost. This young man is not simple. Lee Sen's composure cracked. Then what do we do? Just let him stand over us? Master, the entire internet is tearing us apart right now. Zhou Tong drew a long, slow breath. Losing to someone better than you is not shameful. What is shameful is losing and refusing to admit it, resorting to low tactics instead. This began between chefs. It should end between chefs. He reached into his robe and produced an envelope black as lacquer. Deliver this to him. 3 days from now, I will set a table at Cloud Summit Palace. I am wagering these old bones of mine and Wei Jue Xuan's century-old name. Master, you're going to face him personally? Zhou Tong's expression carried the rare, genuine pleasure of someone who had found something unexpected. I haven't encountered an opponent this interesting in a very long time. I want to see for myself whether this young man is a true prodigy or simply someone who stumbled onto a trick. As you finished packing up your stall that night, the system chimed in your mind. Grandmaster level figure detected entering the situation. Main quest upgraded. Trial of the food god. Accept the challenge and defeat the god of southern cooking, Zhou Tong, in direct confrontation. Victory reward. S-class ingredient space unlocked. Penalty for defeat. Loss of both hands. A chill moved through you. This system was raising the stakes higher every time. At that moment, a young apprentice in a traditional Zhongshan suit stepped forward, holding the black challenge letter in both hands, head bowed with complete formality. Master Zuo. My teacher, Zhou Tong, invites you to a contest 3 days from now. Victory or defeat decided by skill alone. No matter of life or death. You accepted the letter without looking at it. Tell Elder Zhou I don't make a habit of fighting nameless opponents, but he has earned the right to serve as my stepping stone. The apprentice's expression shifted sharply. He turned and left without another word. 3 days passed. By the time the contest arrived, the confrontation between you and the god of southern cooking had set the entire internet ablaze. Cloud Summit Palace was filled to capacity. Master chefs seated in every direction, the air thick with anticipation. At the center of the stage stood Zhou Tong, dressed in a black chef's coat embroidered with golden dragons. A belt of knives hung at his waist, each one a different size, each one gleaming. 2 serving staff wheeled out a pair of carts. On each, nothing but a basin of clear water and a block of silken tofu. Zhou Tong looked down at the tofu and spoke 2 words, silk cut. The assembled masters drew a collective breath. Silk cut tofu. The apex of knife technique in Huayang cuisine, the challenge was to take a block of delicate, easily broken silken tofu and slice it into strands no thicker than a single strand of hair. Not one strand could break, not one could crumble. Placed in water, they had to open like mist, each thread distinct and separate. It demanded not only physical precision, but a stilled mind and absolute control of force. Zhou Tong raised 2 fingers. 2 conditions. First, it must be completed within 3 minutes. Second, we work blindfolded. The crowd went completely wild. This wasn't a cooking contest anymore. This was something out of a martial arts legend. Cutting by sound, by instinct, by the feel of air alone. The system chimed. Temporary challenge triggered. Dance of the blade. Cut more tofu strands than Zhou Tong within the time limit, with a margin of error not exceeding 0.01 millimeters in thickness. Assistant skill. Inner eye. Now active. You felt something settle and sharpen inside you. Fine, but I want something added to the wager. If I win, I want that crock of autumn vinegar you've had sealed for 50 years. Zhou Tong's expression shifted, something real moving behind his eyes for the first time. Agreed, and if you lose, I want your hands. Done. The blindfolds went on. Black cloth, tied tight, the referee called it, begin. Zhou Tong's heavy iron cleaver rose high and came down, and in the last fraction of the descent, transformed completely, becoming something impossibly gentle as it met the surface of the tofu. A rapid, dense percussion of cuts filled the hall, so fast the sounds bled together into a single continuous tone. On your side of the stage, you stood perfectly still. The willow leaf blade rested in your hand. You looked to every person watching as though you had fallen asleep standing up. The audience was climbing out of their seats in anxiety. What is he doing? Has he frozen? 1 minute passed? Then someone in the crowd saw it. A ribbon of silver light moving silently over the surface of the tofu. No sound, not a single sound. The hall went breathless. A blade entering at the molecular level, leaving no trace, producing no vibration. This was a realm of control that most people in this room had believed existed only in story. Even Zhou Tong felt it. His rhythm stuttered almost imperceptibly. A bead of sweat appeared at his temple. He could hear nothing from his opponent's side of the stage, and that silence pressed against him with a force that was harder to fight than any sound would have been. Stop. 3 minutes. Both blades withdrew simultaneously. The blindfolds came off. On both cutting boards, the tofu sat exactly as it had before, untouched in appearance. The highest expression of silk cut. The form moves, but the spirit holds. Plate them. Zhou Tong's confidence was complete. Staff brought the 2 basins of clear water forward. He lifted his block of tofu and set it into the water. It opened. Like a white chrysanthemum in full bloom, thousands of tofu threads unfurled through the water simultaneously, fine as hair, each one separate, not a single strand broken. The craftsmanship was transcendent. The hall erupted in sustained applause, masters on their feet. Zhou Tong stroked his beard, smiling. He turned to look at you. Your turn, young man. You stepped forward without expression, picked up your block of tofu and tossed it into the water. The hall stopped breathing. What emerged from yours was finer than his. So fine it nearly defied sight. The threads dispersed into the water and seemed to vanish entirely, not scattered into fragments, but dissolved into the water itself, turning the basin the faintest shade of milky white. Li Sen couldn't contain himself. They broke. They disintegrated. He cut them into powder. Zhou Tong's face changed completely. He lunged forward to the basin and roared, "Silence. Bring a light." A spotlight swung down and concentrated on the water surface. The crowd leaned in and finally saw it. not fragments, not powder, not wreckage. What filled that basin were tens of thousands of tofu threads, each one 10 times finer than a silkworm's silk, every single strand identical in thickness, drifting through the water in perfect ghostly suspension. Joe Tong's head snapped up. In his eyes was something that had not been there before, the look of a man staring at something his understanding could not fully contain. You cut 108 times through a single inch of tofu. The standard for silk cut was 30 passes per inch. Joe Tong himself had achieved 60, the greatest in living memory. You slid the willow leaf blade back into your coat without ceremony. My thanks for the match, Elder Joe. Please have the autumn vinegar delivered to my stall. You turned to leave. Wait, Joe Tong's voice stopped you. This round goes to you, but knife technique is foundation only. The true contest is flavor. Tomorrow night, same place. I want to face you in 100 birds facing the phoenix whenever you're ready. That night, deep in Weizhui Xuan's temperature-controlled underground vault, Joe Tong stood before a climate-sealed glass enclosure at the room's center. Inside it moved a chicken unlike any ordinary bird. Feathers the color of burning gold, comb a deep arterial red, eyes bright and fierce, presently pecking at a mixture of minced ginseng and cordyceps. Li Sen's eyes went wide. Is that a Crimson Peak golden phoenix? Indeed, 10 years of selective breeding. Original red-bellied golden pheasant crossed with the finest Qingyuan chicken, refined across multiple generations. It drinks mountain spring water. It eats medicinal herbs. It listens to Guqin music while it rests. Its meat carries a fragrance that occurs nowhere else in nature. Its bones are the color of red jade. Li Sen stared at the magnificent bird and felt something close to joy rising in his chest. Master, with this, he's finished. At that same hour, on the outskirts of Jingcheng, an old farmer was turning you away at the road's edge. Son, go on back. Every chicken in this village got bought up by the city people. They said they're disposing of all of them, not leaving one behind. Uncle, let me just take a look. If there's anything unusual, I'll pay double. The old man laughed. Unusual? What's unusual going to look like? A chicken that turns into a phoenix. The two of you walked together to a crumbling chicken coop at the far end of the village. You swept your eyes across the empty space, turned to leave, and the system chimed. Faint but extraordinarily resilient life force detected. Direction: southeast corner behind the abandoned stone trough. You crossed to the trough and looked behind it. Crouched in the dust was the ugliest rooster you had ever seen. Nearly every feather was gone, exposing skin the color of bruised plum. Scars ran across its body in every direction, layered over each other from what looked like years of fighting and surviving. The old farmer wrinkled his nose. That thing? Nobody would want, but your eyes were lit with something the farmer had never seen in a buyer before. Uncle, I'll take this one. Back home, you exchanged for a vial of micro-concentration bone-cleansing herbal liquid from the system, dissolved it into warm water, and began bathing the old rooster carefully. As the medicated warmth soaked through its skin, the bird half closed its eyes and went still, the first peace it had known in a long time. Your silver needles moved next, pressing into acupoints across its body, clearing years of stagnated energy, coaxing the life force that had survived everything the world had thrown at it back toward the surface. A phoenix must pass through fire before it can rise. Tomorrow, I will show the world what an extraordinary soul can look like inside the most wretched exterior. The day of the final contest drew the kind of attention that surprised even the organizers. Every media outlet in the city sent crews. The national broadcaster carried it live. The judging panel was composed of the most decorated culinary critics in the international community. The host's voice rang across the hall with barely contained excitement. Tonight's theme, 100 birds facing the phoenix. Please welcome our competitors. From the left entrance, Joe Tong walked out carrying an exquisite crystal cage. The crowd erupted the moment they saw what was inside. What kind of chicken is that? It's extraordinary. That's the legendary Crimson Peak golden phoenix. One bite is supposed to add years to your life. He's already won on ingredient alone. From the right entrance, you walked out carrying a one-eyed, scarred old rooster. The hall went completely silent. Down in the audience, Li Sen laughed until tears ran down his face. Where did he dig that thing up? Is this a joke? Joe Tong looked at the ugly bird, and his expression did something unexpected. His brow drew together slightly. His instincts, refined across a lifetime, were telling him something was not right about that rooster. The competition began. 2 hours on the clock. The gong rang. Joe Tong moved into his hour's work with the fluid certainty of a man doing what he was born to do. He cleaned the Crimson Peak Golden Phoenix with clean, decisive strokes, revealing skin beneath that gleamed like white jade. Then he brought out 8 additional birds, pigeon, quail, spider dove, and 5 more, and demonstrated a level of deboning that drew gasps from the audience. Blade light flickered and danced, and one by one each bird yielded its skeleton cleanly, skin and flesh left completely intact. He minced each type separately, seasoned each differently, and formed them into 99 delicate bird-shaped dumplings. A massive copper pot went over the flame, filled with a broth he had been reducing for 3 full days and nights. The golden phoenix went in at the center, the 99 dumplings arranged in a ring around it. High heat to open, then low and slow. As the temperature climbed, something remarkable began to drift through the hall. The clean brightness of medicinal herbs woven through the deep, complex warmth of layered meat, like standing in a mountain valley in full bloom. On the international judges panel, the French chef Pierre closed his eyes without meaning to. This is extraordinary. I feel as though I can hear birdsong. Above Jotong's pot, a faint golden mist had begun to rise. The dumplings moved through it as they rolled and turned, appearing and disappearing in the vapor like small birds in flight, circling the golden red phoenix at the center. The visual and the olfactory arrived together, and the combined force of both left the entire room in a state of suspended enchantment. Then the cameras turned to your side of the stage. The contrast was absolute. You were playing with mud. You had emptied a bag of ancient yellow river clay onto your station, the kind that carries a specific mineral depth in its smell, dark and elemental. Your handling of the old Rooster was equally unadorned. No plucking. You split it open directly, packed the cavity with a fistful of wild herbs and aromatics that nobody in the audience could identify, then wrapped the entire bird, feathers and all, in a thick shell of yellow clay, sealing it completely. The audience stared. This is just beggar's chicken technique, isn't it? But he didn't even pluck the feathers. Can you actually eat that? You paid no attention. You set the massive clay ball on the cutting board, then reached into your coat and produced a bottle of strong liquor. You took a mouthful, held it, and expelled it in a fine mist directly onto the clay surface. Then you snapped your fingers. A tongue of blue flame danced at your fingertip. Chi released. Alchemist's fire activated. Effect? Fire guided by internal energy, working simultaneously from outside and within. Temperature reaches 1000 degrees instantaneously. The entire clay ball was swallowed in blue flame. You didn't step back. Your hands moved through the fire without hesitation, striking the surface of the clay ball in a steady rhythm, each impact producing a deep, resonant thud. The ball rotated in the flames, hardening, darkening, beginning to glow red at its core. The audience watched with their mouths open. Is he forging metal? What is happening over there? 1 hour and 50 minutes in, Jotong completed his dish first. The lid came off and a column of golden light rose from the pot. On a vast white porcelain platter, the Crimson Peak Golden Phoenix stood with its head raised, gleaming, lacquered in its own rendered gold, the 99 bird-shaped dumplings arranged in a perfect constellation around it. The fragrance detonated across the hall in a single wave. Please judge. Jotong stepped back with absolute confidence. All 5 evaluators moved immediately. Elder Liu lifted one of the small bird dumplings to his lips, and his expression stopped moving. Pigeon, wrapped around a quail egg with truffle inside. The tenderness is, it dissolves before you can chew it. And this broth is extraordinary. On the panel, the French chef Pierre threw both hands in the air. This is Eastern sorcery. I give it a perfect score. Every eye in the hall swung toward your station. 1 minute remained on the clock. In front of you sat a lump of clay, scorched completely black. That's it, a burned rock? Zuo, just concede. Stop embarrassing yourself. You ignored every word. You lifted the blackened lump and placed it on the elegant white porcelain table in front of the judges. Please judge. Elder Liu's brow furrowed deeply. Is this edible? You raised your eyes and spoke quietly without performance. A true phoenix is not born radiant. It burns in fire. It struggles in mud. It is stripped of every feather, released from every illusion. All of it endured for the sake of a single moment of emergence. You raised the handle of your knife and brought it down sharply against the blackened clay shell. A clean, ringing crack. A blade of white light cut through the darkness along the fracture line. A second crack. A third. With each new fissure, the same blinding pure white light poured through until the entire surface was threaded with luminous lines, the blackened shell holding together just long enough to contain what was inside. You made one sound, a quiet, controlled exhale, and touched the willow leaf blade to the surface. All the light gathered inward at once and transformed, settling into a soft, sacred radiance that lay across the dish like moonlight. What emerged from beneath the shell was the old rooster, feathers and outer skin gone, its flesh revealed in a color that had no right to exist, nearly translucent, the white of polished jade with a faint rose undertone. Then the steam rose. Visible to the naked eye, it climbed in a column above the dish, and as it rose, it slowly, unmistakably began to take shape. A bird, head raised, wings spread, neck arched in a cry of pure ascent. This is Qi ascending into the phoenix form. It only manifests when the entire soul of an ingredient has been completely awakened. It has not been witnessed in 300 years. Zhou Tong's chopstick slipped from his fingers and clattered on the table. This is Qi materialization, lost for 300 years. How? How did you do this? You didn't answer. You drew the knife once across the bird's surface, opening it along its length. The flesh beneath was the soft pink of peach blossoms, and what came from it was not merely a smell. It was a force expanding outward in a single surging wave that swept across the entire hall and consumed Zhou Tong's dish completely, as though it had never existed. There was only one thing left in the room now: nirvana. You extended your hand with the faintest smile. Please, Judge. The French chef Pierre couldn't wait. He tore a piece of breast meat free and put it in his mouth. The effect was instantaneous and total, like a bolt of lightning passing through him from crown to soul. In that moment, Pierre was no longer sitting in a hall. He was a bird. He saw himself breaking from the shell, trembling in winter cold. He saw himself in the desperate scramble for a single worm, bloodied by rivals stronger than him. He felt the inability to move. He felt the darkness of a sightless eye, and beneath all of it, burning through every memory, he felt the unbreakable will to survive, suffering, struggle, combat, endurance. Every emotion translated directly to his palate as an explosion of flavor so vivid and so alive it had no category. This was the taste of life force itself. This was the taste of a soul that had refused to be extinguished. Without knowing when it began, Pierre was sobbing openly, tears running down his face. I am not worthy of eating this. Elder Liu beside him had tears of his own streaming down weathered cheeks.